Hello, welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. Today we are going to be testing out the new NARS holiday collection for 2025. We have the Ethereal Aura blush palette, we have the Solaris eyeshadow quad, and we have a limited edition lipstick. Now, I am so excited for this collection. The NARS holiday collection is probably one of the ones that I get the most excited for every year. They usually do release a really gorgeous cheek palette. So this year we have the Ethereal Aura palette. We do also have a deeper palette, but they're not really being launched together. So this one is currently available on the NARS website, both US and Canada. And the lighter version is available coming soon at Sephora Canada. The deeper version is available at Sephora US, but it's not available on either of the NARS websites yet. So it's kind of scattered, it's kind of confusing. I don't know when it's going to be widely available to everyone, but I did pick up the fairer palette because this is going to work better for me anyway. These face palettes are going to retail for $60 US or 75 Canadian. These are made in Canada and have a 12-month shelf life. This is the packaging of the face palette. I love the texture. And then here are the 6 shades inside the palette. So you get 4 blushes in here, what looks to be a bronzer, and a highlighter. Now I can tell you for the fairer palette, there are only 2 new shades. In the deeper palette, there are 3 new shades. So just something to keep in mind. And then for the eyeshadow quad, you know I love my NARS eyeshadow quad so much. The packaging is also in this sort of ethereal purple, but it is much more simple. And then the color story inside is kind of this icy solstice kind of color story. Very, very pretty. And then the lipstick has the prettiest limited edition packaging. This is in the shade Blame, and this is not a new shade for NARS, but this is their explicit formula, and they have started doing their explicit formula in limited edition packaging for some of these collections. And I can confirm I absolutely love the NARS explicit lipsticks. They are cream formula, but they are very, very long wearing. Not as long wearing as the new Dior lipsticks that I haven't stopped talking about, but this is still a very long wearing cream formula. And like I said, I have been absolutely diehard loving their limited edition packaging of these. So first, let's look at the face palette. I'll show you some swatches. We will do some cheek swatches as well. And then we can create a look with it, and then we can get into the eyeshadow palette and the lipstick. Popping up the swatches. So first we have Please Me, which is like a sparkling lilac, and this is available in an individual blush shade. Then we have Orgasm, Impulse. This is a brand new highlighter shade. Sex Fantasy, this is also pre-existing and was one of the limited edition shades from the spring. Deep Throat, which is also a pretty well-known pre-existing shade. And then Zen, which is brand new. And this also appears to be a bronzer shade, so that is how I'm going to use this one. So it is a really pretty face palette overall, and I do think that I'm going to end up getting a full face look with this. I love that we have a bronzer, a highlighter, and then of course the 4 blushes. I will also be comparing this palette to some of their other face palettes toward the end of the video. But before we get into the demos, let's also look at the swatches of the Solaris eyeshadow quad. So these shades are all just called Solaris 1, 2, 3, and 4. This color story, I'm going to be honest with you, is kind of baffling me a little bit. It's definitely a little bit different than what NARS typically does. We have this sort of shade that looks pretty much just like Orgasm. We have this sort of dusty blue, and then we have a standard cool tone brown and a really gorgeous shimmer. I think they're all so, so pretty. I will try to use all 4 shades today, but realistically, I don't really see myself using all 4 shades in one look, but today I will, of course, make the attempt. So let me pin the hair back and zoom you in. We can get into this face palette and then the other products as well. All right, so zoomed in nice and close. I think what we're going to do is cheek swatches of these 4 blushes, and then I'll probably create a look with the bronzer, the highlighter, and kind of my favorite blush out of the 4. So starting with these 2 shades right here, I'm going to go into that very first one. Now this one is now available as an individual shade as well. And this is kind of like a lilac. And it's very, very shiny and shimmery. It's a very, very shiny blush. Okay, So this is a very, very shiny, kind of leaning glittery blush. I definitely do see some glitters in here as well. So just keep that in mind. I do think this blush is going to cater to a very particular taste. I think this shade could definitely be a highlighter. I think it could be a blush topper. I don't really foresee myself using it as much of an all-over blush, but that's just me and my preferences. So let's go into this cool pink at the bottom. This one does appear to be a matte blush, and this is one that was a part of their spring launch this year. That's really quite pretty. I like that it's not too pigmented. I like that it is buildable. I actually do think that's a really pretty bright pink. I'm going to try to build it just a little bit. That is a really, really pretty bright pink. Okay, so we have the two shades here. So we have one that is basically a highlighter, and we have one that is all matte. I just want to clean off my brush, and I want to add a little bit of Please Me on top. And we can kind of see what they look like layered. Okay, so that's pretty too. So Please Me definitely works as a really nice little topper or highlighter for this matte shade here. I do think that's quite pretty, but let's go ahead and get into these two. All right, so going into the shade right here, this is Orgasm. This is one of their most well-known shades, but this one, I found it looks kind of different when you swatch it either in the powder form or the Baked Gelée formula. It kind of, the shade ends up varying quite a bit. I do find it to be quite a bit brighter in the Baked Gelée. And of course, this shade is a cult favorite. It is such a classic. It has a little bit of that golden sort of glow to it, but it's nothing crazy. It's just a really, really beautiful peachy pink. So very, very pretty. And again, Orgasm is that glowier option. It does have that sort of gold fleck to it. Going into Deep Throat now, this one does appear to be a matte as well. So we get one super, super shimmery blush that could arguably be a highlighter. We have one shimmery blush and we have two mattes. This shade is very pretty. It's like a very neutral rosy blush. Okay, so now we have Orgasm and Deep Throat. Okay, let me take these off and we'll create a look with this palette. Okay, so now that we've tried on all four blushes, let's create a look with this palette. First, I think I'm gonna go into the shade Zen, and I wanna use this as my bronzer. When I swatched this out, it did look a little bit on the warm side, but I think it'll work just fine. Okay, that's warm, but it's workable. I can work with that. I'm just going to go in with a light hand, nothing too crazy. That is quite a pretty bronzer. One thing I forgot to mention as well is that the shades in this palette are not the typical Baked Gelée formula that we usually get with the holiday palettes. These are just pressed powders, much like the powders that were in their face quads that they released this past summer. So if you're a big fan of the Baked Gelée formula, just know that we're not getting that in this palette this year. I tend to really love the Baked Gelée formula. I always found it worked very well for me. I love that it's kind of a little bit more on the sheer side, but still buildable. So I have always loved that formula, but this powder formula is working just as well. So I do think that's a pretty nice bronzer. Like I said, it is a little bit on the warm side, but it does work for me. It's nothing too orange. So I can work with that. That's perfectly fine. For the blush, I think I want to use Deep Throat. This was kind of my favorite of the four. It's just that more pretty neutral rosy tone that I like to go for. I don't necessarily love an overly glowy, sparkly blush. I do still love a good matte or a good satin. That's just my personal preference. Okay, I did over blush a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to grab another brush and I'm going to go in to Impulse, which is that really pretty highlighter shade. This one certainly does have a bit of glitter to it, so if you do not like glittery highlights, just keep that in mind. I don't love glittery highlights, so this is pretty, but holy moly. Okay, I'm going to grab my blush brush and kind of go over that a little bit. Okay, that is really shiny. It does have some glitter to it, so again, keep that in mind. I do also get quite a bit of kick up in the pan from this, so it's going to be very easy to pick up too much if you're not careful. Clearly I was not, but just keep that in mind. I think it's pretty though. Yeah, if you want to glow, this highlight will do it. And it's a really, really good match for my skin tone. It's not too deep. I find a lot of times the highlighters they put in these palettes are too deep for me. This one is definitely not that. So I do think that's quite pretty. So that is the bronzer, one of the blushes, and the highlighter all together. I think that looks really, really pretty. I do think Deep Throat is my favorite of the blushes. I do think I could get a lot of use out of Zen. I do think that's a really nice bronzer. Again, a little bit warm, but nothing too crazy or offensive. And Deep Throat's definitely my favorite of the blushes. I do, of course, like Orgasm, and I like this cooler pink too. I really don't foresee myself using Please Me very much at all, but it all comes down to personal preference. Maybe you would love that shade, but I see myself using the palette in this way most of the time and just going in with a bit of a lighter hand on that highlighter. So let's go now into this eyeshadow palette. Now, from what I can tell, the eyeshadow palette is currently only available in the US. It's not yet available in Canada. So this is retailing for $52 US. This also has a 12-month shelf life and is made in Canada. I can tell you that the color story of this quad doesn't make the most sense to me. Maybe that's just me, but I'm going to try to work with it. I really do foresee myself using these two shades together a lot, but I do want to try to incorporate the top two, so let's see what we can do. I'm just going to take a larger shader brush, and I think I'm going to start with this sort of dusty blue. I do just have my eyes primed with my Alter Ego eyeshadow base and set it down with some powder. So this powder looks pretty pigmented, and I'm going to kind of use a look that I saw on the website as my guide, and I'm just going to lightly dust this all over the lid, maybe keeping it a little bit more concentrated at the lash line. It is quite a pretty dusty blue, like it's not too intense. And if you're new here, I do really love the NARS eyeshadow formula. I've always really, really loved their mattes. I find them very, very silky. And the shimmers are always quite pretty as well. They are a little bit more on the chunkier side, in my opinion, so they're definitely not going to be for everyone. But the mattes are one of my favorite matte formulas. I just love how silky they are. They're so easy to build and blend, but they're easy to sheer out. You never get too much if you don't want to. They're just a really solid formula. Okay, so this is what we're looking like with the blue kind of all over. So I think I'm going to grab a different brush. I'm going to go into this brown, and I think I want to use this one to sort of accentuate the outer V. I don't want to make this too muddy, but I do feel like I need something to sort of anchor everything down a little bit. Same thing on this side. I do love that they used a more cool tone brown. I do think that kind of plays best with everything else. Okay, I'm going to grab a little bit of this pink on a finger, and I guess I'm going to kind of start patting this toward the inner portion of the lid on top of that blue. I feel like the pink naturally has a little flecks of turquoise in it, so it's pairing well enough with the blue. Okay, same thing on this side. Keeping that pink more toward the inner portion. Okay, so the only shade I haven't actually used is this sort of brownie champagne. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do, but I think I might just add this to the inner portion, just for a little bit of sparkle in the inner corner. Oh, that's pretty. That gave a bit of a cast, which I wasn't looking for, but that's okay. Okay, so I don't know that this look is my favorite, but honestly, I really just wanted to test all four of these shades, and I was kind of taking inspiration from a look that I saw on the website. I don't know that it's for me, but I'm glad I was able to somehow incorporate all of these shades. So let me pop on some mascara, I'll zoom you out, and then we can try on the lipstick and get into some comparisons. All right, so to finish this look, we're gonna go into the lipstick in the shade Flame. Again, this is not a brand new lipstick shade. I just I love the packaging so much. This does look like a very nudie type pink. I did just add a little bit of lip liner, just my Makeup by Mario liner in the shade Almond. I didn't fill in the lips or anything. I just wanted a little bit of definition. So going in to this shade. Okay, this is pretty. It's a very nude shade, definitely a little bit warmer than I would typically want to pair with everything else I have going on, but it is quite a pretty shade. Definitely very everyday, very neutral. I don't think it's my favorite NARS lipstick shade, but it is a really, really nice neutral nude if that's what you're looking for. But let's get into the face palette and the eyeshadows. Now, the face palette, I really like this. Again, I love these 3 blush shades right here. I don't foresee myself using Please Me a whole lot. I just really wasn't feeling that shade as much, and I just find it way too sparkly and shiny. For a blush, even as a highlighter, I think it would be too glittery. The bronzer, while a little bit warm, still works very well for me. I was able to go in with a light hand. It did blend incredibly well, just like the blushes, and I can definitely see myself reaching into that shade quite a bit. It's beautiful. The highlighter, you definitely want to be careful with. It is very, very shiny, very blinding, very sparkly, but very beautiful as well. If you don't like glittery highlights, you probably will not like this. It does have a lot of kick up in it. It's a little bit kind of dry feeling, so it is easy to get too much on your brush, so that's just something to keep in mind. But it is a beautiful, beautiful shade regardless, and definitely has me glowing. So let's get into some comparisons. I love this palette. The one thing, like I said, to keep in mind is that this is not the Baked Gelée formula that normally comes in these holiday palettes. These are pressed powders. That doesn't bother me, but I know some people really, really like the Baked Gelée. I do too, but I do think this formula is nice as well. Now, the first palette I want to compare this to is the NARS 24 Karat Gold palette from last year. This one, first of all, was in the Baked Gelée formula, and I really did enjoy this palette as well. This one also had a highlight, a bronzer, and 3 blushes. The palette from last year was a little bit more sheer, and you had to work a little bit more to build it up, but I ended up really liking the shades. I felt like everything worked really well. I do like that this year we are back to the 6-pan format rather than the just 5. I was kind of disappointed with just the 5 last year, but I will say I do prefer last year's blush shades. I just found that these 2 matte blushes, I really, really loved. They're very everyday appropriate blushes, and they look gorgeous on the cheeks. We did get one high shine blush that I haven't reached for as much, but I do think I prefer last year's blush shades quite a bit more. However, I do think that this year's palette is incredible for fair skin. And popping up the swatches, I think the bronzers ended up looking quite similar. The blushes, not overly so, and I definitely couldn't match the highlighter from this year. Then I pulled out the holiday palette from 2 years ago. This was the All the Glitters palette, and there really wasn't a lot of similarities between these 2 either. The All the Glitters palette is also in that Baked Gelée formula. I feel like they tried to go a few different ways with the shades as well. I really did love this particular blush in the All the Glitters palette, but I actually think I do prefer the shades from this year on my fair skin. I think last year may have been the first year that they created a deeper and a lighter palette. So this one was one of those that I think was supposed to cover a lot of different skin tones. So I do think that this year I do like the palette better. There were also a bunch of face quads that were launched this past summer, and I picked up the lightest one in the bunch. This is the Hot Escape Cheek Palette 1. So this is the lightest one. So we did get some very bright pinks. I found the bronzer in here to be very, very warm. The highlighter was pretty but very peachy and too deep for my skin tone. So I was disappointed with this one because even though it's the lightest one, it was still too deep for me. And popping them up side by side, I initially kind of thought of this palette in particular because of the bronzer, but also that bright pink blush, and the one in the holiday palette is a lot more muted. I'll pop up those swatches and you can see there really wasn't any similarities there at all. I found the bronzer from the summer palette just didn't work nearly as well as the one in this palette here. So they have sort of changed up the shades a little bit this holiday. Again, I love that we have a fair palette and a deeper palette. I love that they're covering more skin tones. It's sort of easier to work with that way. For me, this really ends up being an all-encompassing face palette. It really gives me that blush, bronzer, and highlight. I don't necessarily love all of the blushes that are in here, but I do really like this palette overall, and I love that it works very well for my skin tone. I think I'm going to get a lot of use out of at least these 3 shades in particular, but I also like this blush here. So I definitely like it more than the All That Glitters palette. Comparing to last year's face palette, I do like those blushes better, but I like this palette a little bit more overall. So this one I would say is a success. Now, really quickly turning to comparisons of the Solaris quad. So of course, I love the packaging. I love that they did try to do something a little bit different with the eyeshadows. I love this kind of icy take on everything. I don't necessarily love the look that I came out with today, so I'm going to have to keep trying to play with this and see what happens, see if I can create something that I end up really liking from this palette. It's not bad quality by any means. I think the quality of the shadows is phenomenal. I love that the blue is more of a lighter dusty blue, so it doesn't feel too intense. I'm not a big blue eyeshadow fan to begin with, so I'm not surprised I don't love this. I'm really most excited about the 2 boring browns on the bottom though, so I don't know what that says about this palette. So I will of course have to keep testing it and trying it out, and as always, I will let you know my thoughts at the end of the month in my speed reviews, but I didn't have a lot of palettes that were able to give me a lot of comparisons to this specific color story. And I think it's mostly just the pop of blue, because if you cover that blue, you can guarantee we have those browns and that pink in a lot of different palettes. But the first palette I pulled is the Charlotte Tilbury Beautyverse palette from a couple holidays ago. Now I wasn't able to replicate the blue from the NARS palette in the Charlotte Tilbury, but I did swatch the silver beside it, and I think I ended up getting a pretty similar color story. The shimmers have a similar level of shine. The shimmers felt quite similar except for the silver, which is really more of a creamy shade from the Charlotte Tilbury. So that ended up getting pretty close as well. I did pull out the Sugar palette from ABH because this also has like a mix of browns and pinks and then also sort of a pop of blue. This one is definitely more jewel toned-esque, whereas this one is a little bit more muted. And then popping up the swatches, you can see I was kind of able to get something similar, but not overly so. However, I will say between this palette and the Beautyverse palette, both of these palettes give me a look that I like right away, and I'm able to more easily figure out what I want to do, and neither palette has ever disappointed me in the look. But either way, I wasn't really able to perfectly find this color story anywhere in my collection, partially because I don't own a lot of blue eyeshadows. I just don't like blue eyeshadow on myself. The other 3 shades I was able to find within my collection, but not with that blue. So the color story is a little bit unique, but only insofar as that dusty blue. So again, this is a really pretty palette. The formula is great. I do think it's lovely. It's just I don't fully know what to do with this color story when I look at it. So for that reason, I don't know that the palette is the part I'm most excited for. When I initially look at it, it just looks like this icy wintry color story. But then I was a little bit confused over what to do, and I didn't necessarily love how all of the shades played together today. So I will, of course, update you at the end of the month with my final thoughts. So far, I very much like the face palette, and the eyeshadow palette I'm kind of on the fence about. The lipstick, the Explicit formula is a fantastic formula. It is such a comfortable, lightweight, creamy formula that lasts a really long time on the lips. I love the packaging. It's all magnetic, and then you have the raised logo. I think it looks so pretty. So I do like this lipstick quite a bit. I think I like the packaging more than the actual shade of the lipstick, but I do think it is a nice nude shade, and I can definitely see myself getting quite a bit of use out of it. It's a little warmer than I would like, but at the same time, sometimes that is what I'm going for. So I don't mind this at all. I, of course, love the formula, so I'm not upset about the lipstick. I would say in terms of favorites, the face palette, the lipstick, and then the eyeshadow quad. Like I said, I will give you an update at the end of the month with my speed reviews, but let me know all of your thoughts down below. Are you purchasing any of these pieces? Do you have any questions? Just let me know all of your thoughts. I love hearing from you guys so much. If you're new here, I hope you'll consider subscribing before you go. I do upload new videos every single week. Thank you again so very much for watching, and I will see you in my next one.